Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm your host, Smooth Caramel. Today we have another solid choice for discussing these questionable lyrics that we do. Another within that realm of romantic music. In this case, more of that pop rap variety. I've not come up with more than one or two more contenders when it comes to lyrics of this style as of yet. But something tell me with these types of songs, with that man talking to girl kind of hook, where the male artist is trying to spit some game, this is gonna be a very much rich resource for me in finding these lyrics to clown on, I guess. Anyway, let's get down to business. This is, of course, another installment of Smooth Caramel's Bad Lyrics Are Funny. The song in question today is one that I hadn't previously come across until semi-recently. And by that I mean a few years ago. I knew neither the song nor the artist, and it was introduced to me by a friend. This introduction was a memorable one. It wasn't too long after I just moved into a new place back in 2018, I believe. I was just christening the kitchen with a little music / chill / cooking session with this good friend of mine, and we was just doing our thing. I had just moved from a place that had a kitchen so narrow I had to narrow myself and shift sideways to move inside of it to a kitchen where I could actually stand and move with people. A man had now come across some room to dance. And as I've said before, I am one that enjoys making some moves while I'm preparing my food. So the disposition was very much favorable. So the songs were being queued up constantly between my friend and I at this point, and it was an almost 100% success rate for each of our respective selections. A rare and joyous feat when it happens. Then after a while, I was prepared with what has now become a bit of a common preface. I don't know if you're gonna like this one. And then came on Drew Barrymore by Bryce. How to describe my immediate response to this song? Mixed.
Confusion.
The light and bouncy melody comes across as quite playful and almost even childlike. I could imagine something similar sounding being used for some deceptively exciting game for 10-year-olds.
You gotta get a hoverboard. I just think, and it goes wherever I want. Or I can do sweet spins.
Despite this, I could accept this as an overall component of the narrative that was being woven. Brings to mind some playful attempts at flirtation where the potentially outward petulance could be a sign of playfully showing some vulnerability, especially with the way that the chord progression portrays a subtle sense of sincerity. The flow emphasizes this well in addition because of the very easily passed, quite simple syllabic patterns, often well repeated, simple, two-syllable rhymes. Simplicity tends to communicate sincerity through methods such as this, and it juxtaposes relatively well with the more overtly sexual lines that he drops. So my early response at say half a verse into the first verse was somewhat lyrically unfocused, but forgivably so. I was still able to engage with it quite comfortably, and it kept the vibe and the energy of that time quite good. Then came that latter part of the verse where the flow and the vibe begins to slow down a little bit for that inevitable build up to the chorus.
The TV hasn't worked in ages, probably got a shorter cable. Way too busy fucking on the sofa or the kitchen table. Is my vision hazy?
The more household-esque details work well here, establishing a relatable sense of intimacy and attraction between the two relevant people here that are described within this scenario. Enough for me to ignore the extremely labored rhymes in this A rhyme scheme. That's another thing that I noticed actually. A lot of the rhymes in this song are very much pushing the boundary for what works as a rhyme when you're rapping. But that's not the point here. We've established that sense of familiarity and intimacy. We're slowing down for that defining point and emotional release. And the reference to vision becoming hazy is supported nicely by the loosening of the instrumental. Just before the chorus arrives, he manages to slip in,
You look like you're someone famous.
a little bit questionable after having established that familiarity and intimacy. But yeah, maybe being a little bit waved made him see some minor celebrity resemblance. You know, just part of that playful, clumsy charm, maybe, I assume.
Cause you're the next Drew Barry, and I want more.
Let's dive in. There's a lot to unpack here for a slow 3-line section of a chorus. Firstly, the next Drew Barry. So maybe this woman he's speaking to has some potential in basketball. She could even go pro internationally. Not sure if that's the most romantic celebrity comparison to make, you know, when you're referring to someone with whom you're romantically involved. But at least he's supporting her dreams. Anyway, our man here wants some more. More what? More sex? More from the relationship? More of this drink that's got his vision hazy? Okay, probably none of these things. So let's be real. The reality of the narrative that he's creating here is a little bit twisted to try and keep in this extremely labored pun that he's decided to make here. And it just ends up being pretty confusing when you hear the whole thing together. There are a few ways that I interpret it, but I'm not even sure if they make sense as I'm going through them. He in fact was not referring to the retired professional basket player, and in this statement was trying to say that she's the next Drew Barrymore, the famous American actress. This makes a little bit more sense when it comes to a comparison of looks. Drew Barrymore is attractive, talented, successful. It isn't unheard of for celebrity comparisons to be used for flattery. But even with this, you have to assume that the woman in question could bear this resemblance to Drew Barrymore. And let's be real, it's not certain. He used Drew Barrymore solely for this wordplay here. Bit of a stretch. Makes me wonder how much attention he's actually paying to this person. But also, the emphasis on next. It kind of makes me think that with Drew Barrymore there's a role that's been vacated that needs to be filled. But as far as I know, Drew Barrymore is still very much in her business and doing well. That being said, I know very little about Hollywood. I could write that off as my lack of knowledge, although I don't think a song this simple should require that much contextual knowledge. Regardless, we still have the issue of what would actually happen if these were the bars that this guy used in his efforts to try and seduce a woman. I picture one of two responses. The first being a shameless burst of laughter at the corniness of that pun. The second being complete confusion as to what was meant by the statement. The recipient quietly wondering if she'd ever expressed any desire for a career in acting, or basketball maybe. Either way, it somewhat undercuts the otherwise intimate and romantic tone. You know how he speaks of these women wondering why he fucks with this person. I guess this could conceivably come across as more positive if he was simply referencing the onlooking women that we can safely categorize as jealous in this circumstance, and their inability to understand why he chose this blurry Drew Barrymore lookalike or not lookalike. He does detail a lot of their experiences together that could maybe indicate an underlying attraction and chemistry that maybe these other people just can't quite see or understand. Though I would mention if there's next to nothing specifically about this person or her personality in any real detail. A whole lot about how they fuck though, nothing wrong with that. It low-key makes me think that when he's talking about this, that in these less sexual moments, him thinking about these jealous women wondering makes him wonder a little bit. Maybe he's got a bit of a wandering eye. I know that might be a bit of an extra take, but this is just where I've gone. But honestly, when he says that these people are wondering why he fucks with her, it kind of makes me think he might be somewhat absent-mindedly wandering too. If we consider the song something along the lines of his thought process, then it's not really much about her specifically. But even without that reach of an inference, I still can't help but laugh and cringe at this really laboured wordplay and all the strange implications that come with it. The song is fine, nice enough to bop to. It's just every time I hear that chorus, I can't help but picture a man drop that line to this woman and then slowly let a really massive cheesy smile escape. it will remain in my mind every time. Anyway, there's not really much else I have to say here. Keep it real, enjoy corny lyrics, laugh. Otherwise, this has been another Smooth Caramel production. Peace.